I'll let you chime in here. Number 5, Eddie Murphy Raw.
Woo!
Oh
man! Oh man! Dang! Y'all didn't like me for the Richard Pryor take. Y'all probably ain't gonna like me for this Eddie Murphy take.
Oh,
either.
no, don't you do it. Don't you do it.
Listen.
What up, though, everybody? Meech and Darius here for another exciting episode of the GOAT Debate podcast. So glad that you're joining us here on this special edition of the GOAT Debate. We typically don't record on a Friday afternoon, a little matinee recording, but so glad that you guys are joining us. Those of you that are watching us live on Facebook, those of you that are listening via your podcast platforms, we certainly are glad that you are joining us. Darius, how you doing, man?
Man, it's Friday, so we heading into the weekend if you're listening to this live. And plus our topic today is one of my favorite things of all, any kind of leisure activity starts with me with stand-up comedy. So I'm real excited about today's topic.
Yeah, for sure. For those unfamiliar with the GOAT Debate podcast, we debate who truly is the greatest of all time in a variety of different categories. And tonight, this evening, whenever you're listening to this, we are debating the greatest stand-up specials of all time. Now, if you've been following us on our social media, which if you're not doing, I'm not sure why you're not. If you're not, follow us on Twitter and Instagram at GOAT_debate. Search the GOAT Debate podcast on Facebook and YouTube. If you've been following us, though, on social media, we were slated to have a guest today, a world-renowned stand-up comedian who is going to chime in and debate with us and be our guest debater today. But we are unsure if he is going to join the show as he committed to, but we haven't heard from him today. But the show must go on, so we apologize in advance if he does not appear, but we're moving forward and looking forward to having a great show with you guys anyway. So, the best stand-up comedy specials of all time on this edition of the GOAT Debate. Hope you guys are ready. Darius, are you ready?
Of course I'm ready because, as always, there's some sketchiness going on here, if I may say. I have a little bit, the tribe has spoken and they voted, and I don't quite agree with some of the, or at least one of the picks. So, yeah, we got some stuff to debate and talk about.
Oh, yeah. We always do. But to give people a breakdown of how we come up with this ranking, we have our own personal rankings. So Darius and I will rank our top 5 in a specific category. In this case, of course, being the best stand-up comedy specials. We poll our listeners, those that follow us on social media. We call them the tribe. We take a composite of our 3 lists, and we come up with the top 5 in said category. So in this case, of course, greatest stand-up specials of all time. Before we actually get into the top 5, we like to talk about our honorable mentions. We like to call them the first 2 out. 2 stand-up comedy specials that didn't quite make our list, but we want to give them some props anyway. And for our first honorable mention, we're going to go back to 2010 to a comedy special by one of the most famous comedians on the planet today. Probably not my personal favorite comedy special by this comic, but it got a lot of votes from the tribe specifically. So we're taking it back to 2010. We're talking about the great Kevin Hart, and our first honorable mention of the day is Seriously Funny. Darius, what are your thoughts on Seriously Funny?
Man, this brings me back, thinking about this special. I think I don't remember it being aired on HBO or Showtime or anything. I remember it releasing on a DVD. And this is back before Kevin Hart really blew up. I think this was kind of like, I don't know. This is like the rise of Kevin Hart. So that's why I relate to it a lot. I remember him doing a YouTube. He used to, really put effort into his YouTube channel at that time, and they were going to Target to find his DVD in Target. That's how new Kevin Hart was to the comedy game. He was getting excited about his DVD being in Target. But some of the jokes on there were hilarious. His first time getting permission to swear, where he swore at his teacher. My mama told me to tell you.
That
was hilarious. That was like before we kind of got used to Kevin Hart's formula of telling a joke and his style and everything like that. Everything was new. Everything was fresh. That's why this special made my personal list of top. It was just so many laughs in that hour. It was hilarious, top to bottom.
Yeah, man, for sure. And like I said, you kind of made the point that it was one of the first comedy specials that really kind of put Kevin Hart on the map. We know that he had some much bigger specials as he grew in popularity. Laugh at My Pain, Let Me Explain. Those were probably on the scale of money makers, probably much bigger than Seriously Funny. But hey, you got to start somewhere. And Kevin Hart, arguably the biggest stand-up star today, would you say?
I don't think there's an argument. I mean, I know we've gotten the return of Dave Chapelle. We've got, they're speaking of the return of Eddie Murphy to the stage. But I believe 2019, Kevin Hart passed Jerry Seinfeld for the first time as the highest earners in the comedian bracket there. So he's been ascending for, it seems like forever now, but just now passing the juggernaut Jerry Seinfeld. And, he's still doing his thing. He's continued to put out content, time and time again. So
yeah. I think though, a lot of people, and James, shout out to James in the chat room, he's making the point that he believes that Kevin Hart is the biggest stand-up comedy or comic out today. Feels like Kevin Hart has crossed over very well. You probably really have crossed over as a stand-up comedian when you start to make movies and you start to make big time box office generating movies. And of course, we know Kevin Hart has done that with Jumanji. He's done that with the ride-along movies with Ice Cube. Those are pretty successful. So, and he even dipped his toes into the dramatic a little bit. I think, what is the name of the movie? He does the movie with the guy from Breaking Bad, and it was really good. I saw it in the movies. Was it called The Upside? Is that the name of it? Yeah, The Upside. So that was good as well. And of course, we know Kevin Hart has the Laugh Out Loud Network and a bunch of different ventures that probably makes him, the biggest star in comedy today. So yeah, no doubt Kevin Hart is the man. Could we make the argument, Darius, that maybe there's a I don't want to say it's a joke, but there's kind of this running theme that generally with specifically Black comedians, there's usually only room for one to be like really popping at one time. We've seen it with Eddie Murphy was the man, for a time, and and Cat Williams had his time, and Mike Epps had his time, and so now we're seeing like this time Kevin Hart, but Kevin Hart's his time has seemingly lasted a little bit longer than some of those other actors. Although we could make the argument that Eddie Murphy went away for a while, but came back and kind of reestablished himself with the Shrek movies and things of that nature. But But Kevin Hart has had some longevity, in this. I hate to say it, in this position as the black comedic superstar. So we'll see. Some people feel like he's oversaturating, the market.
Mm-hmm.
Will he has so much content out there? Are people getting tired of Kevin Hart?
Yeah, and that goes back to what I said. There's like a formula to his comedy. Everything seems, even his interviews, they're so strategic. I question the sincerity of them sometimes. Not to pull them down in any way, but it's just like so guarded that it's hard. What do you really know about Kevin Hart? But it is disappointing that we only see one black comedian, at a time here. When there was, the Cat Williams, he should have, been somebody bigger, but did he self-destruct? Was that his own doing? And I just wonder who's on the come up that could hopefully join Kevin Hart on that big platform. A lot of people. And I want to say Kevin Hart is trying to do his own form of Harlem Nights. I believe he has spoken about that on several occasions, but where's that? Let's get that. That's what I want to see. If we can get, all the top black comedians in one movie where they're just kind of pulling each other up. You have your veterans like Eddie in there, and Chris Rock, bring him back. I haven't seen him in a while. Dust him off, bring him back. But yeah, all these guys, bring them up. And I think James is in the chat room. Uptown Saturday Night. I think that might be a sequel or spinoff or something of that. And that's what Kevin Hart's looking to bring back. So.
Yeah. Well, we hope to see it, and hope to continue to see great things from Kevin Hart. He's probably due for a new stand-up special. I know probably COVID and things like that are probably deterring any of that kind of stuff from happening right now. But you got Laugh Out Loud Network, and he has a lot of comics that he's putting on through that platform. So you got to give it up to Kevin Hart for not just being in it for himself, but for bringing some other comics up along the way with him. So seriously funny, one of our honorable mentions. And this honorable mention is probably going to shock some people because I personally feel like it should probably be in the top 5. Obviously, most of your mainstream comedians today, when you ask them who was their comedic inspiration, almost every single comic says this guy. So our second honorable mention and possibly biggest snub of the night is Live on the Sunset Strip, Richard Pryor's 1982 stand-up special. And wow, I don't know what to say about this comedy special. Even some, almost 40 years later, it still stands the test of time. It's still one of, the best stand-up specials ever. It won the Grammy in 1982 for Best Comedy Recording. And Richard Pryor is very, very honest in this special. He's very frank about some of the issues that we known him to have with drug abuse and drug addiction. And that is one of the, I think, the hallmarks of a good comedian, right? When they actually incorporate some of their real life struggles, real life situations into their comedy. And so I think people are shocked. I see wow in the chat room in all caps and exclamation points. People are a little surprised that this comedy special is an honorable mention and not actually in our list of greatest stand-up specials of all time. Darius, I'm going to let you touch on this because it made my list. It made the tribe's list. it did not make your personal list. Why? Explain to the people. You got some explaining to do.
I got some explaining to do. Yeah, for sure. You know, I get it. I get the greatness of Richard Pryor. I get that he is a what am I looking for? Not a standard bearer, but a pioneer for the way he spoke on stage. I get all that, but I also don't relate to Richard Pryor that much. The fact that he's 100 years older than me. I know that's disrespectful. I'm just making a joke, but I just don't. His biggest jokes are about him. Doing drugs and catching himself on fire. I mean, I don't really get it. So it's kind of like when I went to watch Bill Cosby, right? I went to my mom took me to watch Bill Cosby. I think I was in college at the time, and his jokes. He just sat there for an hour, and I can look back at it now and appreciate it, and appreciate his ability to just go on stage and just riff. But at the time, he was talking about being a dad and all that. I could not, I couldn't relate. So Bill Cosby is still a great comedian. Richard Pryor is still a great comedian. But for me, it's good. I didn't fall out of my chair laughing, like a lot of people do. So for me, comedy has to hit home. I have to relate. So that's why it misses the mark for me. But I get it. I understand why he's the greatest. I'm not clueless on it. It just doesn't resonate for me.
Yeah, and I can understand that. Obviously, I would say Richard Pryor, specifically. Well, I won't even categorize it to just black comedians. I'll say all comedians. He's probably the godfather of comedy. He is, like you said, a pioneer, and really the inspiration of every famous comedian that you could think of. And so, hey. I had his special ranked number 5. The Tribe had it ranked number 4. And so, it does get some recognition. I would have been really upset had we aired an episode and not gave some recognition to Richard Pryor. We would have lost all credibility as a podcast had we done that on this specific topic and maybe overall.
Right. And if this was strictly what is the greatest and not like, I don't know, there's opinions that are influenced here versus, I get the overall history. If you're going to go in a historical reference, a way to go, then yes, I definitely think he's, top 2 or 3. Because just look at what he's done. It was on a $4.5 million budget. It ended up gaining $36 million in the box office, which when you take a look at things, it doesn't seem to be that great, but it was the biggest comedy-driven comedy stand-up ever up until it got eclipsed, and we'll talk about the person that eclipsed him. And it's still third. And that was filmed in 82. So,
and I mean that budget and that amount of money in 1982, if we quantify that today in 2020, that's huge. That's huge.
And you put some historical God, I cannot speak today. Hello.
There you go. You're back. You're back.
Right. Yeah, there you I actually got excited and hit mute, but the historical context behind him, being the lead of a movie in 1982, when we're just now getting, some recognition for black actors, he's pushing a movie at that time. And if you go back and analyze it even further, it was only in like 800 theaters compared to like your big movies that are in like 4,000. So he made $35 million off of 800 theaters. So not a lot of press, not a lot of push, and he still did big things.
Yeah, absolutely. Salute to Richard Pryor, of course, one of the all-time greats. Like you said, he's probably in most people's top if not top 3, top 5 of comedians all time. And so our 2 honorable mentions for those that are just joining us: Kevin Hart's Seriously Funny, Richard Pryor's Live on the Sunset Strip. So now, of course, without further ado, we're going to get into the meat and potatoes of the podcast, where we count down the top 5 greatest comedy stand-up specials of all time. And we're going to start at number 5. Number 5 goes to a guy who I would probably say, as far as now, Kevin Hart, I've heard him refer to himself as a comedic rock star. I've heard him several times. I've heard him say
all the time.
Yeah,
anytime you talk to him,
yeah,
he will
right.
let you know.
He will let you know he is a comedic rock star. But I actually think this guy was the very first comedic rock star. When I went back and watched some of the specials, and the crowd reactions when he just walks on the stage, the leather outfits, the very, very leathery outfits. It was the 80s, all right? This guy, in my opinion, was the first comedic rock star, and also someone that is probably in, your top 3 to 5 stand-up comedians of all time. We're going to take this one back to 1987. Number 5 on our list of all-time greatest stand-up comedy specials, Eddie Murphy Raw. Eddie Murphy Raw was... There's a common thread in a lot of these, but this particular comedy special was filmed in the Madison Square Complex in New York City back in 1987. $8 million budget, generated $50.5 million in the box office. I'll talk a little bit more about it later, but Darius, I'll let you chime in here. Number 5, Eddie Murphy Raw.
Woo! Oh man! Oh man! Dang! Y'all didn't like me for the Richard Pryor take. Y'all probably ain't gonna like me for this Eddie Murphy take.
Oh either. No! Don't you do it! Don't you do it!
Listen! This did not make my top 5.
Mine either. But go ahead.
All right, so context is king. Context is going to be my recurring theme of this podcast. Okay, so 1987, people were on high for this special. This movie's it hit the theater. You're going to be talking about the numbers and everything, but it hit the theater, and there was high anticipation for this,
Absolutely.
and for good reason. This is Eddie Murphy's second special. And for me, it was a little bit of a miss watching it back.
Oh my God. What's wrong? Okay, go ahead.
What I did like about it was real. And that it he's talked about things that we never heard or wouldn't expect anybody to talk about. Like, he calls out people. And in this special is probably most remembered for him calling out Bill Cosby and for cursing too much on stage, and then he told what Richard Pryor said to him about that, and that was hilarious.
Hilarious.
Hilarious. That
have a that smile and shut the bleep up.
Yes, that is hilarious. That was so hilarious.
Yeah.
But the other 127 minutes. It was a long special, and it just seemed to drag on to me. And he tried to rehash with the McDonald's. I got McDonald's, which is a playoff of a callback from his first special, and ice cream, I think. But other than that, like, there was a lot of misses. I know a lot of it still doesn't stand up, today, as far as gay, and I think went at AIDS in this. So
Yeah.
I get when it was filmed, but even then it had to have been like, whoa, a little bit shocking, a little bit raw.
And he says that, like,
right.
He says that at the beginning, that he had a lot of pushback from the gay community in regards to some of his content from the first special. He talks about that.
Right. And then proceeded to go in on him again.
To go in on him even more. Right. Right.
Like, what? Okay. He just didn't care. And that's fine. It's weird, but it's fine. That's his prerogative. And now we knew how he stood at that time. So I'm all about knowing where people stand if you feel some type of way. But yeah, outside of that, it's just like, I love great storytelling, and Eddie, I think I would classify him as a great storyteller, but it drug on to me without like that real punch outside of the Bill Cosby thing. Bill Cosby was great, and then outside of that, I was just like, all right.
See, I disagree with you. I disagree with you somewhat. I do agree that it was a bit lengthy. It was kind of longer than your run-of-the-mill hour comedy special. I thought it started strong. When he started with the Mr. T impersonation, his Mr. T having beef with him. I know you weren't a fan of his Michael Jackson impersonation.
That was horrible.
It was bad. But the content, what he was saying was funny. Like, that part of it was funny. His impersonation
took me out of it, though, because it was that impersonation was so bad. I was like,
it wasn't good. But his Mr. T is solid. His Richard Pryor is good, and his Cosby is great. His Cosby
very good.
So it started off strong. His Johnny Carson jokes about Johnny Carson getting a divorce, I thought that was really funny. He was mostly talking about why he balked at getting married. He almost got married, but when he saw that Johnny Carson had to give up half of his money to his ex-wife, he decided against it. So it started strong, and then, like you said, it just kind of got lengthy and tailed off a little bit. But overall, Eddie Murphy at that time was a superstar. Put him on. I won't even say put him on the map. He was already on the map by 1987, and was a huge star. The special or the movie did the numbers. I think the studio was probably expecting it to do. I mean, if you paid $8 million to make it and it made 50, you made a nice profit. Some fun facts that I didn't know about Eddie Murphy Raw that many people might not have known, or maybe you did. Eddie Murphy had Robert Townsend as the director of Eddie Murphy Raw, which, Robert Townsend, Meteor Man, the Parenthood TV show from back in the day, very, world-renowned comedian, producer, all of those things. And speaking of producers, one of the greatest producers of comedy ever was a producer of Eddie Murphy Raw, and that was Keenan Ivory Wayans. So of the of the world famous Wayans family. So very, very good comedy special. Some heavy hitters involved with him, as far as producing and directing, and overall one of the best comedy specials of all time, definitely. Even if you think it fell short.
Listen, even though it's hard when a lot of his content is anti-gay, and didn't he get arrested for a little something that
yeah, I would definitely say some of these specials from the 80s probably wouldn't, a lot of the content wouldn't stand up in 2020, that's for sure. But but hey, different time, you could get away with it, and it is what it is. So Eddie Murphy Raw coming in at number 5. Moving on to number 4. Now, I'm a little angry about this one, I must say, because coming in at number 4 is a guy who is far and away. Now, we all have our personal favorites when we talk about, comedians and things of that nature. And this guy is far and away my favorite comedian of all time. And it goes beyond stand-up. Not only are his stand-up specials great, he produced and created one of the greatest sketch comedy shows, in my opinion, the greatest sketch comedy show that ever existed. And I'm talking about none other than the one and only Dave Chapelle. Coming in at number 4 on our list of greatest stand-up comedy specials is Dave Chappelle's Killing Them Softly 2000 comedy special. Hilarious. Dave Chappelle is a native of Washington, D.C. He went back to his hometown of Washington, D.C., filmed this comedy special in the Lincoln Theater, premiered on HBO in July of 2000. It is, I personally do not believe that Dave Chappelle has ever produced a bad comedy special.
Right.
So, I mean, this whole list could have been 5 Dave Chappelle comedy specials in the top 5 if you want to be real. But Killing Them Softly is funny. Definitely has some standout moments. What were your thoughts on it?
Oh man, this is hilarious. I've actually watched this special twice since we decided to do this topic. It's definitely one of my favorite specials that Chapelle did. And as you mentioned, he's had a lot of good specials. And the jokes just kept going. The baby on the corner, he was pulling up in a limo, baby on the corner. He wanted to say something to the baby, but was scared. Turns out the baby's selling weed. Like what? Who thinks of that? Like, where does that come from? He's talking about, his white friend talking to the police, how, unfortunately, that joke always is relatable, unfortunately.
Absolutely. Yeah, for sure.
Monica Lewinsky and talking to the ladies. You've had some guys. I'll use the word guys that you could you'd rather forget about, and they're not as powerful as the president. The tame version of that. I mean, just the jokes are he just slays them left and right. And they talk about Dave Chappelle going on stage for hours, just going on stage unannounced, talking. Joe Rogan, who tours with Chappelle, talks about when Chappelle had his riff with Comedy Central, when he's standing up for his beliefs and went to Africa and then came back. And there was a time where he just wanted to do stand-up, and he would go to the park and get like a loudspeaker or an amp, rather. He'd get an amp and a mic and just be in the park cutting, his comedy routine, cutting his chops in the park. Like, can you imagine you just walking through the park and all of a sudden you hear Dave Chappelle ranting and raving in the grass? Like, that's hilarious. That itself is hilarious. So, I mean, everything he does is funny.
Yeah, man. I mean, I don't know that Killing Them Softly was. It made my list, but in hindsight, for what it's worth, which is his comedy special that came out after he created Chappelle Show, that one was really, really funny. And I mean, but we could go on and on, man. I mean, his most recent ones on Netflix are really funny. The one where he talks about Juicy Smollett. That one is hilarious. That one is really, really good. I would probably say, if we're looking at, because really I was gonna say Richard Pryor, Eddie Murphy, as far as comedy specials go, I think there's Raw and Delirious.
Right.
I don't know that he has any. I think he just went strictly movies after that. I don't think he has any other specials. Obviously Eddie Murphy, the sketch comedy. If you've never seen the Best of Eddie Murphy Saturday Night Live, that is must see. You must add that to your collection because there's some very funny stuff. And I think Chapelle is kind of cut from that cloth with the sketch comedy ability and the stand-up comedy ability. You got to give credit to Dave Chapelle for what he's accomplished. I think as far as a collective body of comedy specials, he might be hard to beat. I think Dave Chapelle, I think Kevin Hart may be able to rival. I don't know that any comedian puts out as many specials as, say Dave Chapelle, Kevin Hart, and maybe Cat Williams. They have a lot. Like usually you look at, Eddie Murphy has a couple, right? Richard Pryor has, maybe, well, actually Richard Pryor has a lot. Richard Pryor has like 17. So I guess nobody put out more content than him. But I guess I'm talking more recently. So, but Dave Chapelle is definitely an all-time great. James felt that this should have been in the top 3. James is number 4. It's close. It's close. One slap.
He's gonna get that bronze medal. He made that bronze medal.
But when we get to the top 3, you maybe will understand why this one was number 4. But for my money, I think that Dave Chapelle is in my personal top 3 stand-up comedians of all time. In fact, he's number 1 for me personally. So got to shout out.
That's a different show.
Different show, right? Greatest Comedians, different show. All right, number 3. And listen, there's some debate when it comes to this comedy special by this particular guy versus his second comedy special. Which one is better? I saw some debate amongst the tribe when we were polling for this particular episode. He is the only comedian to have 2 of his comedy specials in the top 5. We just talked about him at number 5. And now he comes in at number 3, taking it back to 1983. Number 3 comedy special, Eddie Murphy, Delirious, coming in at number 3. Listen, this wasn't as long as Raw. It was, 70 minutes versus, 90. So an hour and 10 minutes. The first 10 minutes, man, of this one is, whoa, it's rough. It's definitely not 2020. It was definitely 1983 in relation to the content. But from, I got some ice cream and you can't have none, and from Reaganomics to all the other Michael Jackson, all the jokes that he told, Eddie Murphy Delirious is arguably better than Eddie Murphy Raw.
This show is the GOAT debate, but there's no debate for me. It's way better than his second stand-up special. I mean, let's talk about it, man. It was released in 83, as we said, and then in 84 it was released on an album, and that won a Grammy. And it was really I think he had done Trading
Places.
Yeah, I think he did Trading Places the year before, did this, and then, from there it was boom, he was gone. When this came out, Eddie Murphy was that comedic rock star that you were talking about. He was gone. The red leather suit. How many comedians did you see after him try to wear some kind of leather in homage to Eddie Murphy? It was just, you already mentioned one of my favorite bits of all time, the ice cream bit. Him picking it up off the floor, so hilarious. James Brown, he'd been singing for 30 years. Ain't nobody understand what he's talking about. Like he be name dropping celebs. Other comedians stay away from it. He'd be going at people, and it's hilarious. He did not care at that time. So that's one of the things that I appreciated him. He just didn't care whether it's his stance on gays at the time, you know, before he got caught with the gay. I need to stop. I need to leave that alone. But Eddie Murphy is. I mean, who else has 2 specials in our top 5? We only have 5 slots. He's got 2 of them. That tells you something about how good Eddie Murphy is.
Yeah, definitely, man. Eddie Murphy is, you know, a lot of people, again, when you look at current comics, you know, and you ask who their inspirations are, you get, you know, most people's first answer is Richard Pryor, and the second answer is usually Eddie Murphy. You know, so those guys are kind of looked at, you know, by current comedians as kind of that on that Mount Rushmore, if you will. And really just Eddie Murphy, like I said, you know, Richard Pryor set the stage. Eddie Murphy took it to, you know, to another level. You know, Dave Chapelle, you know, took it to TV and it took off. And then, you know, Kevin Hart took it to arenas. So, you know, you kind of have seen this progression of comedy with all of these great comedians. And, you know, it's really cool to see. But yeah, man, Eddie Murphy Delirious is, you know, is hilarious, man. Obviously, he harkens back to his Saturday Night Live days when he does his James Brown stuff. If you haven't seen him do, you know, James Brown in the hot tub James Brown skit from Saturday Night Live, that is, you know, that is classic stuff. And so I was glad to see him bring some of that, you know, to the stage. Now, obviously, what comedian is a good comedian without controversy, right?
Yeah.
And Eddie Murphy definitely had his fair share of controversy. A lot of criticism about the profanity in Delirious. He said the F word, they actually counted 230 times. So, but he actually ended up breaking his record with Raw because he said it over 500 times in Raw, and that was the most it was ever used in a motion picture until Goodfellas came out and broke the record. So Eddie Murphy, a king of comedy and of course a king of profanity as well. But listen, you know, I won't say every comedian curses, but you know, it's obviously it wasn't, you know, as it was a little more shocking back then. Obviously now we're used to it. You know, when a comedian doesn't cuss today, it's a surprise. But back then it was definitely more of a shock value there. But 83% approval rating on Rotten Tomatoes with an average rating of 7.5 out of 10. Eddie Murphy did, in his defense, release an apology for some of his anti-gay rhetoric in his comedy specials. Some years later, like back in the mid-90s, he did apologize for, you know, for some of the words that he used and the hurt that it may have caused people. But Eddie Murphy,
before or after he got busted?
I don't know, man. Listen, I don't know. You keep bringing this up, but I know what you're getting at. But yeah, but he did issue the apology, you know, and said he didn't, you know, if it hurt anybody, you know, he apologized for it. And I mean, you know, 1983, 1996, hopefully some awareness and maturity had taken place. Something that we want today in this present day, considering circumstances, some education and maturity. So hopefully some of that, or clearly some of that, took place with Eddie Murphy, and glad to see that it did. So
yeah, because we hear that he's coming back, right? You know, before pandemic, and he can't get on the road, obviously, because of that. And we don't know what he's going to talk about. It'll be very interesting to see what he talks about. And hey, he may have a whole new stance on, you know, the gay rhetoric that he was spitting 20 years ago. So hey, let's see. Let's wait and see.
We shall see. All right, so we're getting here down to the nitty gritty with the top 2. And Coming in at number 2, we got some heavy hitters here, man. Coming in at number 2, the reason that this one was one of my favorites, it was personally my number 1. It's personally my number 1. I think it was your number 2. It was the Tribe's number 5. So this is, and I should go back. I want to backtrack and say that Delirious was a unanimous selection. So it made all 3 of the Tribe, your list, my list. It made all 3 of our top 5. So it was actually, and the next 2 also were unanimous selections as well. So the next one coming in is one of my personal favorites, probably my favorite stand-up special because of the variety that it brought. Right? It wasn't just one person. It was 4 of the best comedians that you could put together and assemble for one comedy special. Obviously, a movie filmed while they were on tour. Hilarious, man. Absolutely. I remember seeing this movie seeing the comedy special in the movie theater, dying laughing. I probably watched it 10 times on VHS or DVD or whatever was out at the time. But coming in at number 2 is the 2000 comedy special, the original. I'll say it again. The original Kings of Comedy, coming in at number 2 on our list of the all-time greatest stand-up specials of all time. I don't know where to start with this one, Darius. I'm gonna let you have the floor. Woo! This one is it's very good, man. It's very good.
Listen, there isn't a dull moment on this comedy special. Everybody's, I don't know what it timed out to be, 20 minutes or whatever, 30 minutes. Everybody's time was so tight and it was so great from top to bottom. Where do we start? Maybe we start with the director, Spike Lee. Maybe we start with it being the second highest grossing comedy stand-up special behind number 3 on our list. Or no, not number 3, number 5 on our list, Raw. Right. As it raked in $38 million. And you can also we talk about the influence of clothes and with Eddie Murphy and all the other comedians who wanted to follow Richard Pryor. The original Kings of Comedy has spun off their own variety of influence, from the Queens of Comedy, the original Latin Kings of Comedy, the Kims of Comedy, the Comedians of Comedy, and the Killers of Comedy, and the Comedy of Comedy. Like, there's so many things that this spawned off of. It's ridiculous. Like, man, it's great. The original Kings of Comedy. We got the 85 South guys now claiming to be the next Kings of Comedy or something like that.
Nah.
Because, listen, you can blame that on Steve Harvey. Steve Harvey, and they went to his radio show and he introduced, these are the next Kings of Comedy.
Oh, wow. Okay. So he co-signed. He co-signed. I mean, I guess that's the right thing to do, right? Pass the torch on to the next generation. I get it, but no.
Yes.
They ain't the Kangs, like they say on the special. We came to see the Kangs, right? Yeah, man.
It's so good, man. Bernie Mac, I think they alternated through the tour, right?
Right. Bernie Mac was last in the movie. And they absolutely saved the best for last. Because Bernie Mac was hilarious. So I like the fact, Steve Harvey was kind of the host. So he was able to get his comedy in, in between the sets of each guy. Everybody had a moment, Steve Harvey with his, taking it back to love songs and playing all the love songs, and the crowd was loving that. And then the lady threw her panties on the stage, and that was crazy. And D.L. Hughley, obviously very funny, but Bernie Mac, man, was the star, in my opinion, of the original Kings of Comedy. I don't know where to start from him talking about, adopting his sister's kids. That was probably my favorite part, talking about adopting his sister's kids.
Yeah.
And, him downstairs. All of that is
some milk and cookies.
Yeah, right. All of that was so funny, man. And it's one of those, no matter how many times I watch it, I can still laugh out loud today. It's hilarious.
And you got to think of where they were in their careers. Steve Harvey and Cedric they were the Steve Harvey show. D.L. Hughley had his own show. Bernie Mac was the only one that didn't have his own show at that time.
At the time, right.
And that, blew him up to where he got the Bernie Mac show. It is crazy. Like, isn't this, I know he's done, Def Comedy Jam and all the standard, but is this not his only special? Like, he didn't have a special by himself, right?
Right. Yeah, I don't recall Bernie Mac having any specials of his own. He obviously made several appearances on, Def Comedy Jam, which is probably where he was most known from. And then obviously, he had some memorable movie roles too, and that kind of got him on the map too. Not big roles, but just small cameo roles,
yeah.
Where he would say, something crazy, who you with, or or Miss Parker in Friday. Obviously he was a preacher in Friday. So, Bernie Mac was ahead of his time. He was hilarious. It's sad that he's not with us today, but it's great that we have a comedy special like the Kings of Comedy that we can go back to and revel in his greatness for sure. But the original Kings of Comedy was a monster. It was very, very good. Very good. Yep. And yeah, man. So what it won. Here's a crazy thing or stat that people didn't know. NAACP Image Award 2001 Outstanding Motion Picture. It was nominated for Outstanding Motion Picture. It didn't win, but it was nominated, which is something to say for a comedy, a comedy special, a stand-up special.
Right.
So kudos to the Kings of Comedy. It's my personal favorite.
Oh yeah, I forgot. Also, you talk about accolades. The comedy special itself was put into the soundtrack off of that was number 50 on the Billboard 200 and 15 on Top R&B. So it's spinning off music from the special. What other comedy special has a soundtrack that charts?
Yeah, for sure. Not many. So yeah, definitely. Like you said, it's definitely a classic. Can't take anything from it. So, all right, man. Well, as always, before we go into our number one, in this case, comedy special, stand-up special of all time, we like to talk about snubs. So we like to talk about those that didn't quite make the list, right? And we felt like, hey, this should have made a list. And so, Darius, I'll let you start. Do you have a comedy snub tonight?
Well, since I was 4 for 5 on my list,
okay.
And my 5th made honorable mention. So with that saying, I was pretty on the nose when it comes to picking out great comedy specials. But I don't have a specific one that is snub. I have comedians that you could have picked from their stand-up specials, like Trevor Noah's maybe Afraid After Dark or maybe even Lost in Translation. That's one of my favorite, two of my favorite specials there. That he's good. He's relatable to me, but didn't quite make the list there. I'm excited for Trevor Noah. He's doing his thing on the Daily Show, and we're about the time for him to release another special. I know some comedians debate whether 1 or 2 years. Every 2 years. I know that may be a little bit different from him, although he still tours. His main duty is the Daily Show. So I'm excited. Maybe the next time we do this, I think we could have. We talk about that one guy, Trevor Noah. Maybe he blows us away with this next special. You're looking a little.
I like Trevor Noah a lot. I honestly haven't. I like Trevor. Let me rephrase. I like Trevor Noah on the Daily Show, but I honestly have not watched much of his stand-up. I'll be honest. Yeah, man. I'm just.
That hurts my heart, man. You've got to
keep it real. So you think Trevor Noah is a comedian that could be on the rise? Is that what you're saying?
I think if he didn't have the Daily Show, he would be here. I know he still tours, but obviously,
yeah. Okay, I can respect that. So the Tribe, when we talk about snubs or comedy specials that they recognize that maybe weren't listed, the Tribe was actually they were 5 for 5 too. Four of the 5 made the top 5, and then Richard Pryor made the honorable mention. But so they don't really have any snubs. But I'll just throw out a couple of specials that that were voted on or got votes that maybe you might want to check out. In your spare time. A couple of Cat Williams specials got some recognition. The Pimp Chronicles Volume 1. Catapocalypse, I think is how you say that. That was one. Kevin Hart's Let Me Explain got a couple votes. We had a Dane Cook vote. Joy Coy got a vote as well. So those are some comedians that the Tribe recognized. Their specials. But one guy that I actually like, I watched his special a while back, and there's some, it's very socially conscious, but he touches on some other things too, and he's very, very funny. Current Saturday Night Live guy, I think has a good potential future with stand-up specials, and that's Michael Che. If you watch the Weekend Report on Saturday Night Live, Michael Che is the black guy. And he has a comedy special on Netflix called Michael Che Matters. And it is very funny. It's one that I've seen a couple times. If you guys haven't seen it, I encourage you guys to check it out. It's pretty funny. It's funny. He touches on, his comedy special is called Michael Che Matters, but he touches on a lot of kind of social things with Black Lives Matter and different things like that. And one of the funny things, without giving too much away, is he's just like, we're just saying Black Lives Matter. He's like, we just want to matter. He was like, we just want to matter. Like, and then he says, we fought for. He's like, we're not even fighting for equal rights. We're just fighting for civil rights. We just want to be civil. We ain't saying, it's not equal. I mean, although we should have equal rights, he's like, we're just saying civil rights. And y'all don't even want us to have civil? We want to be civil, have civil rights? So he has a couple of really good, and his humor is kind of dry, and I'm kind of a fan of kind of that dry humor.
Nonchalant.
Yeah. It's very kind of matter of fact, and it's good, man. So when you get some time, check it out. Michael Che Matters. I'm pretty sure that's a Netflix one. In fact, I'm certain of it. But yeah, check that one out. It's really good. So, without further ado, we're
Wait.
Okay.
Don't rush. Let me ask you a question.
Okay.
Who would you like to see put out another special?
Wow. Well, if you're talking about someone who hasn't put out a special in some years, I would be very interested to see what Eddie Murphy's stand up looks like today. Obviously, very controversial back in the 80s. So I'll be very interested to see what his stand up comedy would look like today. I'm going to say, I know you've had some guys that have made some comebacks with these Netflix deals. You've had Chapelle. His are great. You had Chris Rock. He made Tambourine. That one, I watched that the other night. That one's pretty funny. I was disappointed in Chris Tucker's Netflix special. And I was very excited to kind of see him come back, but it kind of fell flat for me. Claire, of course, says she would love to see Martin Lawrence come back with a comedy special. I am really surprised since she brought up Martin Lawrence. I'm shocked. Nobody voted for You So Crazy. Nobody. I'm so surprised. Martin Lawrence, You So Crazy is... I'm actually mad at myself now. I'm actually mad that I didn't put that in my top 5 because it's one of my personal favorites. But I like, who could I eliminate? But Martin Lawrence, You So Crazy is hilarious, and I'm really, really surprised that nobody in the tribe recognized it. And I'm surprised. I guess we didn't either. So we can't say shame on the tribe. Shame on us. Shame on us too.
Yeah, it's tough when you get to narrowing it down to just 5. Like, I don't know. It's impossible.
And I guess we talked about all these guys, the one black comedian who had runs. I mean, how could we forget about Martin Lawrence? I mean, he had a great run from Martin to the Bad Boys movies to, whatever other movies he made. I was trying to think of another movie. What's the movie with Danny DeVito? What's the worst that could happen?
You pretty much summed it up.
Right, Bad Boys. What's the worst that could happen? Blue Streak. He had Blue Streak. Yeah. So I mean, Martin had it. Martin had his time too. He was, he was probably on. He wasn't doing the specials and all that, but as far as movies and stuff, he probably was, on Kevin Hart level, for at a time. I think so. From a movie perspective, I don't think Kevin Hart has a movie bigger than Bad Boys. You might make an argument for Jumanji, but Bad Boys, I mean, that franchise has done huge numbers. So, yeah. Now I feel like we should re-record this whole episode and include Martin Lawrence, You So Crazy, because how could I forget about that? I feel bad.
He's just snub. And we get some talk in the chat room. James Jones asked about Eddie Griffin. He wants to see an Eddie Griffin. Like
Eddie Griffin I
just want to see Eddie Griffin, that he's still alive. That's what I would like to see.
Yeah. The last comedy special I remember Eddie Griffin having that I remember seeing of his was actually really funny. It was funny. It's just not memorable enough for me to, one, remember what it was called, and two,
or a joke from it,
or to make this list, or a joke from it. But Eddie Griffin, of course, is funny. Claire said we should redo the pod. We should do the podcast over because we didn't recognize Martin Lawrence. And if Martin ever listens to this, we're sorry, Martin. Yes. I know he listens to every episode of the GOAT Debate, but
that's true. That's true. He is a big fan and a big supporter. So
he knows our
heart. He knows our heart.
He knows our heart. All right, man. So number 1, this song was not only this movie. I said this song. This movie was not, or stand-up special was not only a popular song by Method Man. Some people may know where I'm going with this. This guy is a huge star on the comedy scene. We're talking about 1996. We're talking about Marion Barry. Taking it back to Marion Barry, when that man says, who was running against him that a crackhead actually won the election? I was crying, laughing. But coming in at number 1, best stand-up specials of all time, Chris Rock, Bring the Pain. 1996 HBO special. He comes right out the gates. It's funny because for whatever reason, someone pointed this out in an article I was reading in preparation for the podcast. Was that like all of these great comedy specials were filmed in DC? So Bring the Pain was in DC. Dave Chappelle's Killing Them Softly was in DC. And there was one more. Somebody else had a really big. I don't know if it was Delirious in DC. I believe so. I think Delirious was filmed in DC as well. So, but yeah. So all of these great comedy specials, DC for whatever produces 3 of the best comedy specials ever: Bring the Pain, Delirious, and Dave Chappelle's Killing Them Softly. But Chris Rock, Bring the Pain, man, he comes right out the gate, like just clowning DC, clowning Marion Barry, and then it just keeps rolling from there, man. It is an all-time great, Dares.
Bring the Pain was a beast. I mean, 2 Emmy Awards, Primetime Emmy Award for Outstanding Variety Music or Comedy Special. Also Outstanding Writing for a Variety Music or Comedy Program. So 2 Emmys for that. It also spawned the hilarious, and unfortunately it had to go, Chris Rock Show, which that gave us some moments off of that. But you mentioned the hilarity there. O.J. Simpson, where also we heard earlier talk about Eddie Murphy, how he didn't want to get divorced. I thought it was hilarious. He took the other stance on divorce. If you have 30 million and you lose 15, you're okay.
But you still got 15, right?
Still got 15. You make 30,000 and you lose 15,000. Woo! So I mean, he just is able to take real life, break it down, and find the funny in anything. That's what I love about this special. It was my number one, and it is the composite number one for a reason. It's just so funny, so funny.
Yeah. It came in on my personal list. Came in at number 3, but definitely a classic. Anthony in the chat room pointing out that D.L. Hughley had a comedy special also done in DC. So all the greats play DC apparently. So that's really cool. But yeah, man, Bring the Pain was what I found interesting about this is that at the time, Chris Rock thought that his career was actually spiraling down. Like before this special came out, he had felt like he had reached the height of his popularity. He played Pookie in New Jack City, which was at that time probably what he was most known for, right? And so he obviously had been performing stand-up and things like that for a long time. So he felt like he needed to do something to jumpstart his career because he just felt like he was falling off. And so here we get Bring the Pain. After we get Bring the Pain, that spawns the Chris Rock Show. That spawns him getting bigger movie roles. He was in Lethal Weapon 4. He was in Dogma. Then he comes out with Bigger and Blacker. That comedy special was also, very good. So, it really, I guess in Chris Rock's eyes, and I guess the eyes of many, really kind of shot him into the stratosphere as a comedic star. Obviously, rave reviews for Bring the Pain. Entertainment Weekly called it a classic, groundbreaking. Variety magazine said it was one of the most remarkable hours of comedy ever to air on television. James points out, of course, Everybody Hates Chris spawned from all this. So Chris Rock was just able to catapult his career, and it was largely due to the success of Bring the Pain.
Yeah, it is, and it still holds up today, which is one of the reasons why it's so great.
Yeah,
just watched it today. Freaking hilarious throughout.
Yeah, I watched it a couple days ago in preparation, and I was just like, Whereas Delirious and Raw probably not probably they don't hold up in 2020. As far as content, like some of the things that Eddie Murphy is saying, he definitely couldn't say today. Same thing with probably Richard Pryor as well. Some of the content probably can't say today, but Bring the Pain, Dave Chappelle, Killing Them Softly, those are more recently made, so some of the content is kind of more conscious of some of the social ills of the day and hold up. But I mean, even in 1996, you didn't have the cancel culture and all of those things that you have today. So for it to hold up, some years later is definitely commendable. So Chris Rock, Bring the Pain, number 1 on our list of greatest stand-up specials of all time. Just to recap, Bring the Pain, number 1. The Original Kings of Comedy, number 2. Eddie Murphy, Delirious, number 3. Dave Chappelle, Killing Them Softly, number 4. And Eddie Murphy, Raw, coming in at number 5. And then we gave the honorable mentions to Richard Pryor, Live at the Sunset Strip, and Kevin Hart's Seriously Funny. So that is the list. Another great episode, and it is a very strong list. This is the second episode in a row where it seems like our lists have been very much in sync with that of the tribes. We kind of were on the same wavelength. We kind of had the same 5 to 6, 7 comedy specials, all kind of ranked up there and highly regarded. So maybe next week it'll be different, or we'll be disagreeing on more. But for right now, everyone is all on one accord, and that's not always a bad thing.
No, not always a bad thing.
Yeah.
And we got in the chat room. Claire said Jamie Foxx, I Might Need Security.
Yeah,
is one that we missed. He's a guy that I heard that is possibly looking at making a comeback.
Yeah,
I would love to see him on stage.
Yeah, and Jamie Foxx is going to bring you some variety too, because he's going to do the music and the comedy. So he's going to blend all that together. He's definitely multi-talented in that regard.
Yeah. And one name that doesn't get spoken about, but maybe should, he dabbled in it for his 50th. Will Smith. I would like to see Will Smith step on stage.
I'm good.
Oh, did you see him? Did you see his little?
I saw a little thing. You talking about the Facebook show where he's doing all this stuff he wants to do at 50 or whatever?
Yeah, and he Dave Chapelle got him on stage.
Yeah, Chapelle was his coach. Yeah, I saw it. Yeah. I mean, it wasn't bad, but it wasn't like after seeing it, I was like, oh my God, I want to see a Will Smith comedy special. Nah, I'm good.
All right.
But I mean, if it happened, I mean, he's Will Smith. We're probably going to watch. But, I mean, I would some other people I would much rather see. You talked about Jamie Foxx. I would much rather see Jamie Foxx. I would definitely want to see when Eddie Murphy comes back what he brings to the table, much more than I would want to see a Will Smith stand-up special. All right, your silence says you don't agree with me. That's cool. That's what the GOAT Debate is all about. Well, we want to thank you guys so much for listening to this episode of the GOAT Debate podcast. Be sure, if you have not already, please follow us on our social media. We're at GOAT_debate on Twitter and Instagram. Darius is disgusted with me right now. You can search the GOAT Debate podcast on Facebook and YouTube. And if you haven't already, please subscribe. Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, Anchor. We're everywhere. So be sure to do that if you haven't already. Darius continuing to point out that Will Smith is funny. I didn't say that he wasn't funny. So there's a difference, right? And we're running out of time here today. There's a difference between like being funny and being like stand-up funny. Like, I'm funny at family functions, but I'm not about to go out here and do a stand-up comedy special. You know what I'm saying?
I don't know. You're just comparing yourself to Will Smith's funny right now.
I mean,
that's where we're at.
I might be funnier than Will Smith.
Whoa!
Oh, I might be. I'm just saying. I'm not a better actor, you know, but I'm just saying.
This is a debate we're not gonna have.
We're not gonna have this. It is what it is. James is a hater, so I'm not even gonna worry about what he's talking about. I'm not funny.
I'm gonna put it on the screen.
Yeah, go ahead. But that's a lot of hate and animosity towards me from somebody that knows me very well. But it is what it is. But I digress. We want to thank you guys for listening to this episode of the GOAT Debate Podcast. Until next time, this is Meech and Darius signing off. We'll check you out. Stay safe. Peace.
Peace.